If you think the justice system protects everyone equally, what I'm about to tell you will shatter that illusion forever. Before we dive into this nightmare that's still unfolding, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the truth about what's happening inside America's most notorious prison needs to be heard. Now, let's begin. March 7th, 2023. A gray Tuesday morning in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Attorney Rachel Kimball sat in her cluttered office, scrolling through her emails, when a message stopped her cold. The subject line read, "Your client never made it." The sender was anonymous. The body of the email contained just one line and an attachment. Check the transfer log for David Chun. They're lying to you. David Chun was Rachel's client. 28 years old, convicted of armed robbery 3 years prior, sentenced to 12 years at Louisiana State Penitentiary, known worldwide as Angola. David had been a model inmate, no infractions, working toward his GED, staying out of trouble. 2 weeks ago, Rachel received notice that David was being transferred to Allen Correctional Center as part of a mass relocation due to staffing shortages at Angola. She tried calling him at Allen to discuss his upcoming parole hearing. They told her he wasn't there yet, still in transit, paperwork delayed. But 2 weeks in transit? That didn't make sense. Rachel opened the attachment. It was a scanned document, a transfer manifest dated February 21st. David Chen's name was on the list of inmates scheduled for transfer from Angola to Allen. But next to his name, someone had written in red ink, "Redirect Camp J, authorization Caldwell." Camp J, Rachel knew that name. It was Angola's most notorious section, a maximum security unit that had been officially closed since 2018 due to inhumane conditions, extreme isolation, no natural light, cells barely large enough to stand in. Human rights organizations had fought for years to shut it down, and they'd won, or so everyone thought. Rachel grabbed her phone and called Allen Correctional Center, asking specifically for David Chen's location and booking number. The clerk put her on hold. 5 minutes passed. 10. When the clerk returned, her voice was different, guarded. "Ma'am, we have no record of a David Chen being transferred to this facility. You might want to check with the originating institution." "I'm calling from the originating institution's records." Rachel lied. "Your facility signed the receiving documents." "Ma'am, I'm going to have to transfer you to our supervisor." The line went dead. Rachel's hands trembled as she pulled up the Louisiana Department of Corrections database. She entered David's inmate number. The screen loaded slowly, then displayed his status. "Transfer to Allen Correctional Center, February 21st, 2023. Current location, Allen CC, Cell Block D." But Allen just told her they had no record of him. She called David's mother, Mrs. Chun, a quiet woman who cleaned houses for a living and visited her son every month without fail. "Mrs. Chun, when was the last time you heard from David?" 3 weeks ago, Mrs. Chun replied, her voice thick with worry. "He called me the night before the transfer. Said he'd call again once he got settled at the new place. But I haven't heard anything. I tried calling Allen, but they keep giving me the runaround. Miss Kimball, is my son okay?" Rachel didn't know how to answer that question, because the truth was she didn't know, and that terrified her. She spent the next 6 hours making calls. Other attorneys, inmate advocates, family members of inmates who'd been part of the same transfer. She found 12 other cases just like David's. Inmates who were supposedly transferred to Allen Correctional Center, but who couldn't be located. Families who hadn't heard from their loved ones in weeks. Phone calls that went unanswered. Visitor requests that were denied or ignored. 13 men, all transferred on the same date. All missing. By evening, Rachel had made a decision. She was driving to Angola. Tomorrow, first thing, she'd demand to see the transfer records, speak to Warden Caldwell directly, and find out what the hell was happening to her client and the 12 others. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios, clerical errors, database glitches, bureaucratic incompetence. But none of it explained the anonymous email. None of it explained why someone inside the system had reached out to her specifically, warning her that they were lying. At 2:17 in the morning, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Miss Kimball?" A man's voice, barely above a whisper. "Don't go to Angola tomorrow. They know you're asking questions. If you show up there, you'll end up like your client." Rachel sat up, her heart pounding. Who is this? Where's David Chun? Camp J. They're all in Camp J. But it's not what you think. It's not just isolation anymore. They're using them for something else. Something they can't let the public find out about. Using them for what? What are you talking about? I can't say more on this line. Meet me tomorrow night. There's a diner off Highway 61, 10 miles south of Angola. Mel's truck stop, 9 p.m. Come alone. Don't tell anyone. If you bring cops, I disappear and your client dies. Wait, I need more information. The line went dead. Rachel's mind raced. This could be a trap. It could be someone trying to scare her off the case. But what if it wasn't? What if David and 12 other men were being held somewhere in Angola, hidden from the system, subjected to God knows what? She made her decision. She'd go to the meeting, but she wouldn't go unprepared. The next day crawled by. Rachel spent compiling every piece of information she had. Transfer documents, emails, phone records, family statements. She backed everything up to a cloud server and sent a copy to a colleague with instructions to open it if she didn't check in by midnight. At 8:15 that evening, Rachel got her car and started driving. The highway stretched dark and empty before her, lined with dense forest and swampland. Spanish moss hung from ancient oak trees like gray curtains. The deeper she drove into rural Louisiana, the more isolated she felt. Mel's truck stop appeared like a beacon in the darkness. A run-down diner with flickering neon lights and a parking lot full of 18-wheelers. Rachel pulled in, checked her surroundings, and walked inside. The place smelled like grease and burnt coffee. A handful of truckers sat at the counter. None of them looked up. She took a booth in the back corner, positioned so she could see the entrance. 9 o'clock came and went. 9:15. 9:30. Rachel began to think she'd been stood up, that this whole thing was a cruel joke. Then the door opened and a man walked in. Early 50s, wearing a correctional officer's uniform. His face was pale, drawn, like he hadn't slept in days. He scanned the diner, spotted Rachel, and walked directly to her booth. "Miss Kimball," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "My name is Officer Thomas Pike. I've worked in Angola for 19 years, and I'm about to tell you something that's going to put both of our lives in danger." Rachel leaned forward. "Where's David Chun?" Pike reached into his jacket. For a split second, Rachel thought he was pulling a weapon, but instead, he pulled out a flash drive and slid across the table. "Everything's on here," he said. "Video footage, internal memos, transfer orders, the truth about Camp J, about what Warden Caldwell and the state are really doing with those inmates. But you need to understand something, Miss Kimball. Once you see what's on this drive, there's no going back. You'll be a target, just like me, just like anyone who knows too much." Rachel picked up the flash drive, her fingers closing around it. What are they doing to those men? Officer Pike looked at her with haunted eyes, eyes that had seen things no one should ever have to witness. "They're not just isolating them. They're erasing them, making them disappear from the system, so they can use them however they want. No oversight, no accountability, no one asking questions because officially those inmates don't exist anymore. Use them for what?" Pike opened his mouth to answer, but before he could speak, the diner's front window exploded in a shower of glass. The sound of gunfire erupted. Pike's body jerked as bullets tore through him. Rachel screamed, diving under the table as chaos erupted around her. When the shooting stopped, Rachel looked up. Pike was slumped against the booth, blood soaking his uniform. His eyes found hers one last time. "Run," he gasped. "Don't trust anyone. They're everywhere." Then his eyes went blank. Rachel clutched the flash drive and ran. Rachel burst through the diner's back exit into the parking lot, her legs pumping, lungs burning. Behind her, she heard shouting, boots on pavement, the unmistakable sound of pursuit. She reached her car, hands shaking so violently she could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. She floored the gas pedal, tires squealing as she shot out of the parking lot onto the dark highway. Her rearview mirror showed headlights. 2 vehicles closing fast. Black SUVs with no markings. They weren't police. At least not any police that would help her. Rachel's mind raced as fast as her car. Officer Pike was dead, murdered right in front of her, because of what he knew, because of what was on the flash drive now burning a hole in her jacket pocket. She fumbled for her phone, trying to call 911 while keeping her eyes on the road. But before she could dial, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number. Against every instinct, she answered. Miss Kimball. It was a different voice this time. Calm, professional, cold. You've made a terrible mistake tonight. Officer Pike was a troubled man, paranoid, unstable. He attacked you in that diner, and officers responded appropriately. That's the story that's going into every official report. That's the story the media will tell. He didn't attack me, Rachel shouted into the phone. Someone murdered him. Someone who doesn't want the truth about Camp J getting out. There is no truth about Camp J, the voice continued, because Camp J doesn't exist anymore. It was closed years ago. Everyone knows that. What you think you discovered is nothing more than a conspiracy theory, a fantasy created by a disturbed corrections officer who couldn't handle the stress of his job. I have evidence. Pike gave me evidence. A pause. Then, softer, more menacing. That flash drive in your pocket? It's blank, Miss Kimball. We've been monitoring Pike for weeks. We knew about his little meeting with you. We knew he'd try to give you something. But what he gave you is worthless. We made sure of that. Rachel's blood ran cold. How did they know about the flash drive? Unless Pike had been compromised from the start. Unless they'd been watching him the whole time. Pull over, the voice commanded. Give us the drive. Walk away. Forget about David Chun and the others. Go back to your comfortable life in Baton Rouge. Or keep running and end up like Pike. It's your choice. Rachel ended the call and threw the phone out the window. They were tracking her through it. Had to be. The SUVs behind her suddenly accelerated, pulling alongside her car. She could see the driver now, a man in dark tactical gear. He wasn't trying to run her off the road. He was hurting her, forcing her toward a side road that led deeper into the swamp. She saw her chance. A sharp turn ahead, leading back toward the main highway. Rachel yanked the wheel hard, her car fishtailing as she made the turn. One of the SUVs tried to follow, but took the corner too fast, spinning out into a ditch. The second SUV stayed with her, relentless. The highway appeared ahead, lit by occasional streetlights. Other cars. Witnesses. Safety. Rachel pushed her vehicle to its limit, engine screaming. She merged onto the highway, weaving between late-night travelers. The SUV fell back slightly, unable to pursue as aggressively with witnesses around. Rachel didn't slow down until she reached the outskirts of Baton Rouge. She ditched her car in a Walmart parking lot, grabbed her laptop bag and a flash drive, and caught a taxi to a motel on the edge of town, the kind of place that took cash and didn't ask questions. In the dingy motel room, Rachel locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and sat on the bed with her laptop. Her hands were still shaking. Pike's blood was still on her jacket, but she had to see what was on the drive, had to know if he died for something real, or if the voice on the phone had been telling the truth. She plugged in the flash drive, held her breath as the files loaded. It wasn't blank. Dozens of folders appeared on her screen. Video files, audio recordings, scanned documents. Rachel opened the first video file. The timestamp read February 22nd, 2023, the day after David Chen's supposed transfer. The footage was grainy, shot from a security camera angle, showing a long corridor of cells. Camp J, men in orange jumpsuits were being led into cells. Rachel recognized David Chen immediately. He looked terrified but unharmed. She counted 12 other men being locked into adjacent cells. 13 total. The missing inmates. But what happened next made Rachel's stomach turn. Men in medical scrubs entered the frame, pushing equipment for stands, monitoring devices. They began hooking the inmates up to various machines. The inmates were fighting, shouting, but guards held them down. One by one, they were injected with something. Within minutes, their struggles ceased. They became compliant, docile, their eyes glazed and empty. Rachel clicked to the next video, dated 2 days later. The same inmates, now sitting calmly in their cells, responded to commands from the medical staff. They were being tested. Memory tests, physical endurance tests, psychological evaluations, like lab rats. The third video made her blood run cold. It showed David Chun in an interview room, sitting across from a man in an expensive suit. The audio quality was poor, but Rachel could make out fragments of the conversation. "You don't exist anymore, Mr. Chun," the suited man was saying. "Not in any system. Not in any database. Your family thinks you're at Allen Correctional. Your lawyer thinks you're lost in bureaucratic shuffle. But you're here, and you're going to help us with something very important. What do you want from me?" David's voice was hollow, drugged. "We're testing a new protocol. Behavioral modification through pharmaceutical intervention. If it works, we'll eliminate the need for long-term incarceration. We'll be able to reprogram violent offenders, turn them into productive members of society. You should feel honored. You're helping to revolutionize the justice system. You're experimenting on us. We're offering you a chance at redemption. Play along, and maybe you'll get out of here someday. Resist, and you'll spend the rest of your life in this cell. Those are your options." Rachel paused the video, bile rising in her throat. This wasn't just illegal. This was monstrous. They were using inmates as human test subjects, men who had no legal representation, no oversight, no way to refuse or report what was being done to them. She opened the document files. Internal memos between Warden Caldwell and someone identified only as Dr. Reeves. The memos outlined the program's goals: develop a chemical compound that could suppress violent impulses and enhance compliance. Test subjects would be selected from the inmate population based on specific criteria. No family connections, minimal legal representation, sentences long enough that no one would question a prolonged transfer. One memo, dated 6 months before David's transfer, made Rachel's heart sink. Phase 1 trials on previous subjects showed promising results, but ultimate failure due to unforeseen side effects. Subjects became catatonic within 8 weeks, recommending we terminate current test group and begin Phase 2 with fresh subjects. Have identified 13 candidates meeting our criteria. Rachel understood now. This wasn't the first group. There had been others before David, and the 12 men with him, others who'd been used and discarded when experiments failed. She kept reading. Found budget documents showing massive funding from a private pharmaceutical company called Helix Biotech. Found emails discussing the need for secrecy, the importance of maintaining plausible deniability. Found a list of state officials who'd been briefed on the program and had given their quiet approval. This conspiracy went far beyond Warden Caldwell. It reached into the state capitol, into private industry, into places Rachel couldn't even begin to fathom. A knock at the motel room door made her jump. She slammed the laptop shut, grabbed the flash drive, and moved to the window. 2 men in suits stood outside her door. They looked official, clean cut, but their body language was wrong. Too aggressive, too focused. "Miss Kimball," one of them called through the door, "we know you're in there. We just want to talk. We can protect you. But you need to give us the evidence Officer Pike gave you, for your own safety." Rachel looked around frantically. The room had 1 door, 1 window. She was on the 2nd floor. If she went out the door, they'd grab her. If she went out the window, she'd probably break her legs in the fall. She made a split-second decision. Opened her laptop, uploaded every file from the flash drive to her cloud storage, and sent copies to every major news outlet she could think of. Local news, national news, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press, investigative journalists, civil rights organizations. She sent it everywhere with a brief message, Evidence of illegal human experimentation on inmates at Louisiana State Penitentiary. Officer Thomas Pike was murdered tonight to keep this secret. If something happens to me, make sure this gets out. The knocking became pounding. Miss Kimball, open the door. Now. Rachel grabbed her laptop and flash drive, climbed onto the bathroom sink, and pushed open the small window above the toilet. It was barely large enough to squeeze through, but she managed, scraping her arms and legs as she pulled herself onto the roof of the motel's first floor. She heard the door to her room splinter open. Shouts. Footsteps. Rachel ran across the roof, jumped to the adjacent building, and climbed down a fire escape. She hit the ground running, disappearing into the dark streets of Baton Rouge. She had no phone, no car, no allies, but she had the evidence. And as of 5 minutes ago, so did dozens of journalists and activists around the country. Rachel found an all-night internet cafe and logged into her email from a public computer. Already, responses were coming in. Reporters asking for verification. Organizations promising legal support. The story was getting out. Pike hadn't died for nothing. But as Rachel read through the emails, one message stopped her cold. It had been sent 30 minutes ago from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You don't understand what you've done." She opened it. "Dear Miss Kimball, you think you exposed a crime. You think you've won. But all you've done is paint a target on the backs of 13 men who are already forgotten by the world. The program in Camp J can be shut down. The evidence can be explained away. But those inmates, they know too much. They've seen too much. And now that you've made them a liability, there's only one way to eliminate that liability. By tomorrow morning, David Chun and the 12 others will be dead, and their blood will be on your hands. You could have walked away. You could have let us handle this quietly. But you chose to be a hero. Congratulations, Miss Kimball. You just killed your own client." Rachel stared at the screen, the words blurring as tears filled her eyes. She thought she was saving David. She thought exposing the truth would protect him. But she'd been so focused on revealing conspiracy that she hadn't considered the immediate danger. They were going to kill all 13 men to cover their tracks. And it was happening right now. Rachel looked at the clock on the computer. 3:47 a.m. How long would it take to get to Angola? An hour? Maybe less if she drove fast enough. But she had no car. No way to get there in time. Unless she did something desperate. She picked up the cafe's phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? "There's about to be a mass murder at Louisiana State Penitentiary," Rachel said, her voice shaking. 13 inmates in Camp J are going to be killed to cover up illegal human experimentation. You need to send every available unit right now. Right now. "Ma'am, can you give me your name and location?" Rachel hung up. She'd done what she could. Now she had to hope it was enough. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be. Because the people behind this program had resources, power, connections. They could make 13 inmates disappear in minutes. Make it look like anything. A riot, a fire, a mass suicide. By the time police arrived, if they even took her call seriously, it would be too late. Rachel sat in an internet cafe, watching the clock tick toward dawn, knowing that somewhere in the darkness of Angola Prison, David Chin and 12 other men were living their final moments. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. Rachel couldn't just sit and wait for David Chin to die. She ran out of the internet cafe and flagged down the first vehicle she saw, a delivery truck making early morning rounds. She offered the driver $200 cash, everything she had in her wallet, to take her to Angola. The driver, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked at Rachel's desperate face and bloody clothes and asked no questions. She just nodded and drove. They flew down Highway 61 as the sky began to lighten from black to deep purple. Rachel checked the time obsessively. 4:23 a.m., 4:37, 4:51. Each minute felt like an eternity. Each minute could be the one where they executed the inmates. "What's happening at the prison?" the driver finally asked. "Something terrible," Rachel replied, "and I might be the only person who can stop it." They reached Angola's main gate at 5:14 a.m. Rachel jumped out of the truck and ran to the security checkpoint. 2 guards stood behind bulletproof glass, looking bored and half asleep. Rachel slammed her hands against the glass. "I'm attorney Rachel Kimball. I have evidence that inmates are being illegally detained and experimented on in Camp J. I demand immediate access to speak with those inmates. Right now." The guards exchanged glances. One of them picked up a phone. Rachel couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw his expression change from confusion to alarm. He hung up and pressed the intercom button. "Ma'am, you need to leave the premises immediately. You're trespassing on state property." "I'm not leaving until I see my client. David Chun, inmate number 74392. He was transferred here 6 weeks ago, and I know he's being held in Camp J." "Ma'am, Camp J has been closed since 2018. There are no inmates in that facility. You're lying. I have video evidence. I have documents. I've sent everything to the media. By this afternoon, the whole world is going to know what's happening here. Unless you let me see those inmates right now and prove they're alive and unharmed." The guard's hand moved towards something under his desk. An alarm button. Rachel realized she was about to be arrested or worse. But before he could press it, another vehicle pulled up behind her. Then another and another. News vans. 3 of them. Cameras and reporters spilling out, drawn by the emails Rachel had sent in the middle of the night. They'd seen the evidence. They'd smelled a massive story. And they'd come to get it. A reporter Rachel recognized from the local CBS affiliate rushed forward with a microphone. "Miss Kimball, are you the attorney who sent us the Camp J files?" "Yes," Rachel said loudly, making sure the guards could hear. "I'm here to verify the safety of 13 inmates who are being illegally detained and experimented on. The authorities have been trying to silence me all night. They murdered Officer Thomas Pike to keep this secret. But it's too late. The truth is already out." The cameras were rolling now. The guards looked panicked, speaking urgently into their phones. Rachel knew she'd backed them into a corner. If something happened to those inmates now, with media present, there'd be no way to cover it up. Within minutes, a convoy of vehicles arrived from inside the prison. State police, federal agents in unmarked cars, and finally, a sleek black sedan carrying someone Rachel immediately recognized from his photos in the files. Dr. Marcus Reeves, director of the experimental program. He stepped out of the sedan, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, and walked directly to Rachel with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Kimball," he said smoothly, "you've caused quite a commotion. But I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private." "No," Rachel said firmly. "We discuss it right here, right now, with these cameras rolling. Where is David Chun? Where are the 13 inmates you've been using as test subjects?" Dr. Reeves' smile faded. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Those files you distributed are fabrications. Deepfakes. Officer Pike was a disturbed individual who created false evidence to support his paranoid delusions." "Then you won't mind giving me and these reporters a tour of Camp J," Rachel countered. "If there's nothing happening there, you have nothing to hide." The standoff lasted for nearly a minute, Reeves calculating his options while cameras captured every second. Finally, he nodded. "Fine, we'll conduct a tour. We'll show everyone that Camp J is exactly what it's supposed to be, empty and abandoned. And then, Miss Kimball, we'll be discussing the legal consequences of your false accusations." The group moved into the prison, a bizarre procession of reporters, lawyers, guards, and officials. They walked through the main complex, past cell blocks filled with regular inmates who watched with curiosity. Then they headed toward the isolated northeastern corner where Camp J stood. As they approached, Rachel's heart sank. The building looked exactly as it had in the exterior shots from Pike's videos. But something was wrong. Too quiet, too still. Reeves unlocked the main door with a key card and gestured grandly. "After you, Miss Kimball. See for yourself." Rachel stepped inside, followed by the media crew. Her flashlight from the night before was still in her jacket pocket. She pulled it out and swept it across the space. Empty cells. Dust everywhere. No sign of recent activity. No equipment. No inmates. Nothing. As you can see, Reeves said behind her, this facility has been abandoned for years. Whatever Officer Pike showed you was either filmed elsewhere or digitally fabricated. There's no conspiracy here. Just a closed wing of an old prison. Rachel's mind raced. The videos had been real. The timestamps were from just days ago. But somehow, they'd cleaned everything out. Moved the inmates. Erased the evidence. Done it all in a few hours since she'd sent out those files. She walked deeper into the building, checking every cell, every corner. The reporters followed, cameras rolling. But there was nothing. Pike had died for nothing. David Chin was still missing, and now Rachel looked like a conspiracy theorist who'd fallen for fake evidence. Then she saw it. In the third-floor corridor, just past the main camera shot, a small detail the cleaning crew had missed. A medical bracelet, the kind used to identify patients, lying in the corner of a cell. Rachel picked it up. The name printed on it read, Chun, David Subject 07. What's this? Rachel held it up to the cameras. Reeves barely glanced at it. Could be from when this building was used for medical isolation years ago. Proves nothing. But Rachel noticed something else. The bracelet was warm, not room temperature. It had been worn recently. Very recently. She looked at the cell more carefully. The floor had been mopped. She could see the watermarks. But in the corner, barely visible, was a small smear of something dark. Rachel knelt down, touched it with her finger. Still slightly damp. Blood. This blood is fresh, Rachel announced. Someone was in this cell within the last few hours. You moved them. Where did you move them? That's not blood, Reeves said dismissively. It's probably rust or mold. One of the reporters, a sharp woman from the Associated Press, pulled out a testing kit from her bag. I have a field test for blood. Takes 30 seconds. Let's settle this right now. Reeves' composure cracked for just a moment. That won't be necessary. We're done here. Everyone needs to leave. This facility is structurally unsafe. But the reporter was already swabbing the substance, adding the reagent. The swab turned bright blue. Positive for blood. Recent blood. The cameras captured everything. Reeves trying to maintain his calm. Rachel holding up the medical bracelet. The positive blood test. The reporter asking pointed questions about where the inmates had been moved. Then Rachel heard it. Faint. From somewhere below them. A sound that made her blood run cold. Banging. Rhythmic. Like someone pounding on a pipe. There's a basement, Rachel said. The video showed a basement level. There's no basement in this building. Reeves said quickly. The blueprints will show that. But Rachel was already moving, searching for stairs, following the sound. She found a door marked maintenance, authorized personnel only. It was locked. She kicked it. Once. Twice. The old wood splintered. Stop her. Reeves shouted to the guards. But the guards hesitated, aware of the cameras, aware that this was being broadcast live. Rachel kicked the door again. It burst open, revealing stairs descending into darkness. She ran down them. The reporters and cameras close behind despite Reeves screaming for everyone to stop. The basement was exactly as it had appeared in Pike's videos. A long corridor lined with cells. And in those cells, 13 men in orange jumpsuits, alive but drugged, some barely conscious. David Chin was in the third cell, and when he saw Rachel, tears streamed down his face. Rachel, he whispered, you came. I thought they'd killed you. The cameras captured everything. The inmates, the medical equipment hastily shoved into a corner. The 4 stands, the drug vials, all of it, undeniable proof. Rachel turned to face Dr. Reeves, who'd followed them down, his face ashen. It's over. You can't hide this anymore. These men are coming out of here, right now, and you're going to explain to the world exactly what you've been doing to them. But Reeves smiled, a desperate, defeated smile. You don't understand, Miss Kimball. This program has support at the highest levels. Governor, legislature, federal contracts. Yes, you exposed it. Yes, there will be an investigation. But do you really think anyone will face consequences? We'll sacrifice a few people, issue some apologies, pay some settlements. But the program will continue. Maybe not here. Maybe not with these specific inmates. But somewhere. Because the people in power want this. They want a way to control criminals, to modify behavior, to eliminate the need for expensive long-term incarceration. Your little victory today changes nothing. Rachel stared at him, rage and disgust warring inside her, because part of her knew he was right. Powerful people rarely face real consequences. The system protected itself. But then one of the reporters spoke up. This isn't just a local story anymore, Dr. Reeves. This is international news. Every outlet in the world is going to cover this. There will be federal investigations, congressional hearings, criminal trials. You've been caught on camera. The evidence is everywhere. And unlike these inmates, you don't have the luxury of being forgotten. Over the next 3 hours, federal agents arrived and took control of the scene. The 13 inmates were evacuated to a hospital for medical evaluation. Dr. Reeves, Warden Caldwell, and 17 other prison officials were arrested. The state governor called an emergency press conference, claiming he had no knowledge of the program and promising full accountability. Rachel sat with David Chun in the hospital as doctors examined him. He was weak, traumatized, but alive. His mother arrived, sobbing, holding her son for the first time in 6 weeks. "Thank you," David said to Rachel. "You risked everything for me. For all of us." Rachel nodded, too exhausted for words. She'd won. But at what cost? Officer Pike was dead. She'd spent a night running for her life. And as Reeves had said, she knew this fight wasn't really over. The powerful would protect their own. There would be legal battles for years. But for now, 13 men were free. 13 men who the system had tried to erase. And the world knew what had been done to them. 3 months later, Rachel testified before a Senate committee investigating the Camp J program. The hearings were covered extensively. Criminal charges were filed against dozens of officials. Helix Biotech stock price collapsed. The Louisiana Department of Corrections faced a complete overhaul. But on the last day of her testimony, Rachel received an envelope, no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper with a typed message: Camp J is closed. But there are 17 other facilities running similar programs across the country. You found one. Congratulations. 16 more to go. The question is, Miss Kimball, do you have the courage to keep looking? Rachel stared at the note for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and started making calls. To journalists, to investigators, to other attorneys who might be willing to help. Because if there were 16 more Camp JS out there, 16 more places where forgotten people were being used and abused, then her work wasn't done. Not even close. The fight for justice never ends. It just moves to a new battlefield. And Rachel Kimball was ready for war. If you made it this far, you know the truth now. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed for those with power. But every so often, someone fights back. Someone refuses to look away. And that's how change happens. One case, one attorney, one story at a time. Hit that subscribe button because this story isn't over. There are 16 more facilities out there, and I'm going to find every single one of them.